Hi, and welcome to a brief video about how to use McGraw-Hill's MyMath for your remote learning needs. During this time, obviously, we might be isolated, schools might be closed due to the COVID-19 virus. We want to make sure that students have all the opportunities we can possibly muster to keep learning active and interactive and engaged, and quite honestly, fun. So this is a video to help teachers using McGraw-Hill MyMath use the resources as a remote learning opportunity. Most of what we're going to be talking about today requires that both teacher and students have available username, password, login opportunities to MyMath. So we're going to be utilizing some digital resources. I'm going to show you that from the teacher point of view, and then I'm also going to show you that from the student point of view, and some resources that you can use and different ways to be able to get to different resources that kids and teachers may need. First things first though, with McGraw-Hill MyMath, of course, every student has a consumable interactive textbook. The consumable book is the best way for students to have opportunities for math at home during this time of isolation. Obviously, we can help students to better understand the math, and just having the book obviously doesn't mean that they're getting instruction. So we can utilize some methods for teachers to be able to provide some more resources for kids in that way. So let's get started. I'm currently on the MyMath Teacher Center, and for today's purposes, I'm in 3rd grade, and we're going to be working on Chapter 4, and specifically a lesson called Lesson 2, Multiplication as Repeated Addition. And all that means is that we're going to be looking at the resources here that are assignable to students digitally. Of course, all students who have access to digital also have a digital book. And so my students and I, as a teacher, were able to locate Chapter 4 on this drop-down menu and Lesson 2. I can see that I have a video right here on my home screen. Students have this video on their home screen as well. And to access the student book, all I or my students would need to do is come down here and click on ebook. When I open up the ebook, we will see the entirety of, there I am, I'm right at Chapter 4, Lesson 2, Multiplication as Repeated Addition. And so I'd be able to utilize this, my students would be able to utilize this text. Of course, up at the top, I do have highlighting tools, I have a pen tool, I have a note taker tool. I also have the opportunity to turn the answers on and off from my teacher point of view. Now down at the bottom of the screen, you're going to see that there are several icons that live at the bottom of the screen, and these icons are there for your students as well. And they'll take your students to different aspects or digital resources that they can use during this lesson. So for instance, if my students come down to the bottom and click on the blue play button, they'll get access to a video that
multiplication. Multiplication is an operation on two numbers that can be thought of as.
And so that's a video that explains multiplication as repeated addition to my kiddos. Additionally, down at the bottom, we have things like tools and e-help, as well as worksheets. And here's more. More is usually a leveled reader. Yep, there's your leveled reader right there. So students have access to that. We have an opportunity for enrichment and exploration of mathematics that I could assign to my students right here, as well as the geometer's notebook and a personal tutor. The personal tutor is something that teachers may really want to take advantage of. And you can see from my screen now that I have an English version of this personal tutor as well as a Spanish version. What this does is really explain the entirety of the lesson to my students again. The teacher has an interactive smartboard, and she's going to be utilizing the smartboard to teach kids about multiplication as repeated addition. So once again, my students were able to access all of these resources simply by pulling down the drop-down menu, going to chapter and then lesson, and then opening the ebook over on the right-hand side. You can see that below this, they also have lesson resources here as well, And if I click on any one of these lesson resources, it'll take me to the same reference points that I might need for, again, Chapter 4, Lesson 2 that I got to on my drop-down menu. So that's the first and easiest, most direct way for students to have access to McGraw-Hill My Math learning opportunities during this time of closure. We'll talk about some other ways and some opportunities teachers have to give students a more directed path as well. So as you may know as teachers, underneath the drop-down menu up here that we call the hamburger menu, if I open this up, I'll see that I have resources, and I also have plan and present and assessments, and I can utilize resources and my plan and present lesson plan to also access other features for my kids. So for instance, if I go to my lesson plan under plan and present, and again, you can see I'm at Chapter 4, Lesson 2. I can even see each one of these blades has the entirety of my lesson plan, what's in the math, developing vocabulary, launch, build, practice, apply, differentiated instruction, and a lesson wrap-up. If I open any one of these blades, not only will I see my instruction, I'll also see digital resources over to the right-hand side. So these digital resources can be assigned directly to my students. So for instance, during the practice procedural skill and fluency portion, I see that I have that multiplication video. I have a different video on making meaning that's using connector blocks. I have the virtual teacher here again, and I also have a self-check guided quiz. All of these resources are items that I can assign to my students. And I do this simply by clicking on the little cogwheel that you see at the corner of each one of these assets or tiles. And when I click on that, it'll give me an opportunity to assign this resource. So I'm going to go down to the bottom. I'm going to assign this self-check quiz. I'm going to click on the gear. I'm going to click on assign this resource. And you'll see that I have a make an assignment page that comes up. So really all I have to do is type in the name of the resource, call it a self-check quiz. I'm going to ask my students to complete the quiz and check your answers. Now this is nice because I know that this self-check quiz will actually give my students immediate feedback as they go through. Down here I have the start date, that's today's date. The due date, you know what, the due date I'm going to push out to the end of the month, so the due date's going to be March 31st, and I'm going to have an expiration date of March 31st also. And then I can see my students at the bottom of the screen. Now I happen to have 5 students in this class. I want all 5 of my students to have this assignment, and so I'm going to click on the box beside student. We can see that that provided a check mark to all of my students in this class. And then up at the top of the screen, I'm simply going to click the assign button. And it tells me, hey, I can hear a couple other options. I'm going to view the assignment details. Yep, that's exactly what I wanted to have happen. I'm ready to go back. And now what I'm going to do is take a look at all of the resources that I've assigned to this class. That's an easy process as well. Up in the menu option again, I'm going to click on Assignment Tracker. When I click on Assignment Tracker, I can see all of the resources that I've assigned to my kids. These all happen to deal with Chapter 4, Lesson 2. So for instance, I have the virtual plan. I have a video and repeated addition. Down here, I have the chapter video I've assigned to the kiddos. I have a game called Dino Dig. I have a leveled reader that I've assigned to them called Making a Budget. And I have a practice and self-check quiz. Now, the reason I wanted to assign these to my students is that when my students have a checklist or a menu or to-do list, that's very helpful for them. So if we think about this remote learning opportunity and making sure that our students have as much guidance as possible, providing this kind of assignment list to my kiddos is probably going to be the best bet to make sure that they actually know what to do, have instructions. And you could see when I was making that assignment, I was able to fill in a nice big text box about provide instructions for my students so that everything was as clear as possible. So making sure that my students have a list of things to accomplish for this week, great opportunity. And you notice when I opened each one of these, I could see each one of my students' names. I could see when they submitted it. If they uploaded files, I could certainly see when that was done as well, and I could actually look at the resource if I needed to. So none of my students have completed this Dino Dig. I just assigned it today, but we can come down here and see that I know one of these resources, my student James, oh yeah, James already viewed the chapter video. So here's James Evans. He viewed the chapter video, he hit done on his chapter video, and I know that he submitted that today. So this is also a way for teachers to keep track of what students are completing and what they're accomplishing, what resources they're using. So I want to talk to you about one more opportunity here to make sure that students have a real clear pathway to learning, and that is going to be the use of the McGraw-Hill MyMath Online Assessment Center. So this is great because not only does the Online Assessment Center have tests and assessments, it also has practice and homework opportunities. And so unlike your students having the physical book at home, you're at your home, this remote learning opportunity doesn't really give you a chance to see what kind of work they're doing. We can get some feedback from the students through the Online Assessment Center. And so we're going to see that there are tests, there are spiral review activities, there are vocabulary activities, but there are also practice and homework opportunities in the Online Assessment Center. And so I'm going to give you the path to that Online Assessment Center, and then the final thing we'll do today is take a look at what the students see, and we'll move over to the Student Center. So once again, back at the top of the page, I'm going to click on the menu, and I'm going to come down to Assessments. When I click on Assessments, I'm going to click on Online Assessments. And this will take me to my Online Assessment Center. So the way I want to get to the assessments to assign to students is I'm going to click on My Test Library. And I'm going to come to, you see where it says My Test. And I'm going to go specifically to My Math 2018 Grade 3 English. And it says English because we also offer this in offer My Math in Spanish as well. And so we want to make sure that you're clear you have a Spanish resource or you have an English resource. And so if suddenly, when I clicked on My Math 2018 Grade 3 English, I can see all of the resources. In fact, I've got more than 20 different pages full of resources that I could assign my students. The easiest way to find the resources you're looking for is to use this search bar right here. And I know that I'm looking for Chapter 4, Lesson 2. So really what I'm going to type in is, I'm just going to type in CH for chapter, and I'm going to type in 4, and you can see that automatically all of the resources available for Chapter 4 have populated. And if I want to look for a specific lesson, I can just understand this nomenclature here as well. So for instance, right here, Student Edition, Grade 3, Chapter 4, Lesson 2, this is a practice page. Well, I know that Chapter 4, Lesson 2 is multiplication by repeated addition, and so I know that this is a resource that I might want to assign my students for this lesson. To assign this, super easy. I've located the resource that I want. I can come down here to the cog or gear wheel again, and you can see immediately I've got Assign to Class. If I assign this to my class, it will take me to another assignment page. I know exactly what I'm assigning to my class. Right here's the name, Chapter 4, Lesson 2, Practice. I can see that I'm turning this off and on manually. If I needed to schedule times for this to be available, I certainly could. Notice that it provides me a date and time stamp here, but I think for my purposes for remote learning, I might want to just leave this on so that my students can go ahead and complete it. We're not in any time constraints here. I also see that it lists that all of my students are receiving this resource. Yep, and there they are. There's all my kiddos that are in my class. I'm going to close students, and I'm going to assign to my class. It's as easy as that. that resource will now appear for your students and they'll be able to go online and take it. So the best part about this is the opportunity to use the online assessment center provides your students with a very easy way to show their aptitude and skill as they've been working through some of these resources. It also gives you the opportunity to collect some grades as well. So very quickly, I'm going to go back to my home screen on the Teacher Center. We've talked about utilizing the drop-down menu for chapter and lesson. I and my students, we can utilize the ebook, and we know all of these lesson resources are available through the ebook. I've also been able to look at my lesson plan via Plan and Present and assign resources to my students through the lesson plan. I also have resources up here at the top of the screen. I can drill down into chapter and lesson via the resources tab as well. And finally, we look at opportunities for online assessment right here. So before we wrap up, a couple last things. I do want to flip over to the Student Center, and I'm going to do that now. And here I am. This is my Student Center. In fact, this is the Student Center for James Evans, the student that we were referring to before. And you can see that his Student Center looks exactly like mine. James can manipulate to Chapter 4, Lesson 2. We can see that James has the same video listed right here. James has the ebook option listed right here, and the lesson resources. And if you notice, James actually has a to-do list underneath this as well. So it says that due on March 31st is Chapter 4, the Lesson 2 virtual teacher video. So my students have a real clear visual cue that they have some work to do listed right here on their front page. In order to get to that work, oh, by the way, and an assessment opportunity as well. My students can also come over to the hamburger menu, and they'll see homework. Well, when they click on homework, very similar to the Teacher Center we were looking at, my students will see a list of resources like a menu that they can go ahead and complete. So as James is here, he sees that he has the Dino Dig game that he can play, and James can simply click on Dino Dig and it will pop up for James, and James can start playing the Dino Dig game. Once James is done, once all of my students are done, and this is something that my students may need some direction on, you do want them to hit the done button right here. So when it's listed as done, that tells me as a teacher back on my Teacher Center that my student has completed that work, it's all finished, and so that I could maybe possibly go check in with that student as well. Notice that it has also moved Dino Dig into homework history. So right up here, items that are currently still due or due later because I set the date out for March 31st, and homework history, things that my students have already completed. So these are really practice opportunities for my kids, teaching, modeling opportunities, videos and whatnot that my students can utilize and practice at home. If I wanted to pull grades from my students again, we could have them utilize the resources in the online assessment center. And to do that, my students would just, again, access the menu at the top of the McGraw-Hill Student Center screen and click on Assessment. This will move them to the assessment, and we can see that my students have 4 different opportunities right now. They have an Am I Ready assessment, beginning of Chapter 4. They have a homework for Chapter 4, Lesson 2. They have a practice page for Chapter 4, Lesson 2. And I've already assigned the Chapter 4 chapter test as well. For my students to do any of these, it's as simple as sliding their cursor over to the homework or the practice and clicking on Take Now. That will open up the online assessment center and that very particular resource for my students. We can see kids can confirm grade 3, chapter 4, lesson 2 practice. You are about to start a test. Okay, so this is practice. It does say that it's a test. We'll want to make sure that we can coach students as this is a practice page. It's not necessarily a test. We're just providing some resources for kids. And they're going to see that they have chapter 1. They can choose the answer that they would like, and they can save and continue. Once again, choose the answer, save, and continue. In fact, my students could also, at the very top of the screen, see how many questions there are and be able to go back and maneuver all the way through. It's very important that students also know that they have to submit, right? So, in fact, here's a nice extended response question. My students will save and continue, and it's going to say finish and turn in. We want to make sure that students do not finish and turn in before they've answered all of the questions. So we're going to close that. So once again, students have an opportunity either through their homework tab or through the assessment tab here to utilize any of the work that you would like to assign as a teacher during our remote learning session. I'm going to go back real quick to the Student Teacher Center just to give you one last piece of advice. So regarding those online assessments, any time that my students have completed online assessments, we're going to go back as teachers to our online assessment center. It'll take us right here to a place where it says assign tests. You can see here are the same 4 assignments that I've seen. And if we go ahead and click on any one of these assignments, we'll be able to see the results and the score sheet for my students. So you can see this is James Evans. This is the test for the practice page that I just completed. We know he only completed 2 of 15 and it's still in progress, but I'm able to actually look at that score sheet. I could also clear, I could print it out, and up at the top I can see that I can gather item analysis and standards analysis if those are important to you for any one of these opportunities. Last but not least, before we sign off today, I do want to remind you all that there is a professional development tab in your Teacher Center. This professional development tab provides a lot of different resources about learning how to manipulate and maneuver within McGraw-Hill MyMath. I really recommend, if you haven't, taking a look at the MyMath Getting Started document right here, as well as this full Quick Start course. The Quick Start course is a really great feature, and it'll give you everything from a full overview to print materials, a lesson overview, a technology overview, which is what our point was here today, and then opportunities around assessment materials. Incidentally, if you go into the technology overview, it also has a technology overview for students. So this is something you might want to be able to share with your kiddos as well. So thanks so much. I hope this was helpful for you all. This was a little bit of a video around McGraw-Hill MyMath remote learning opportunities. My name is Greg Smith, Senior Curriculum Specialist with McGraw-Hill Education. Thanks so much and stay safe. Thank you.